Hello, and welcome to the second session in the series. Today we're going to be talking about healthy habits, and I'll let Spencer get us started.
So just to follow up with last week, if you are watching these videos in order, the first session was types of health, and there was a few things that were asked to complete it or referenced during that first types of health presentation, including the lifestyle assessment, which kind of provides a check-in and helps to update or build upon the individualized plans that were also created and referenced during that first types of health session. And then in addition, there's also touching base on some of the education that was provided, which included stages of change, which will be a good piece of education to reference as we go through this next session of healthy habits. So those are some of the extracurricular and also things referenced in that first types of health presentation that would be good to have to review or reference throughout this healthy habits presentation. So in previewing what today will look like in our healthy habits presentation, we will start off by referencing and defining what is a habit, and then getting into a tool often used when it comes to developing healthy habits, habit tracking. Following that, we will talk about what is a routine, how to structure a routine, and then finally that will transition into creating a routine, including incorporating some of the habits that we referenced in the first piece of the presentation.
So I will get us started off talking about habits. So take a minute and think to yourself, what is a habit? A habit is a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. So I like this definition because it does focus on the fact that habits are difficult to give up. And a big part of that is because they are so automatic. So a habit is something that our brain notices that we are repeating over and over and over. And so our brain's like, hey, let's make this thing easier. So we have to put less effort in so we can focus on other things. So it makes it more automatic. So you don't have to think about it as much. You're just kind of doing it. It's just part of your day to day. So that's why it's hard to give up too, because it does become something that is so automatic. You're not consciously really thinking about it as much after it's become a habit. And so with this, I do want to say that habits are not only our behaviors or actions or reactions to things, but they're also our thoughts. So you can have a habit of a negative self-talk. So if you mess something up, you could be thinking like, man, I'm such a failure. Like, I always do that. Blah, blah, blah. And so you'll notice automatically those thoughts will start coming in if you do have a habit of this. And so again, this is something automatic that just starts happening sometimes, and you're not stuck in this habit. It's just something to be aware of and recognize, so you can decide what is serving you and what is not, and decide what you want to do about it. And so today we'll actually be sharing some tips and tricks for how you can change a habit. Either it's creating a new habit or stopping a habit that is no longer serving you. So I'm going to talk about habits in 3 different steps. This can actually be broken down a little bit more, but for the purposes of today, we're going to just use these 3 steps. And I'm actually going to use the example I gave in the first session where I'm trying to start a habit of meditation. And so we'll use that kind of as an example to go through these steps. So the first thing you see here is the cue. A cue is something that can trigger the behavior or action or thought. So a cue can be something external in the environment. So it can be a person, a place, a thing. Example could be if you're in a certain environment around certain people, you might feel triggered to have a cigarette or triggered to have a drink. I know that I don't drink, but even when I go into bars, that might cue that feeling of wanting a drink. And so that's an example of an external cue. Another example of an external cue could be one that you set on your phone. So like an alarm could cue you to do something. So cues can be external, and then they can also be internal. So an example of that could be your stomach is grumbling and you're feeling hungry. That could cue you to eat. Another example could be feeling really stressed out, and you might be in the habit of smoking when you're stressed. So again, internal and external cues, and they can also be naturally occurring, which are just things that happen on their own, like the environment or people around you or bodily functions. or they can be purposely planned, like the alarm example. So that's something that you set up to cue yourself on purpose. One more example of a cue could be that you might set on purpose is some people that want to get in the habit of exercising in the morning might lay out, exercise clothes for themselves so that when they wake up, they see the clothes and that kind of cues them to start their habit of exercise. So that is this first step. Then the second step we kind of have been touching, that's the action or the habit itself. So for my example of meditation, my cue is actually the day of the week. So I'm trying to meditate on Wednesdays and on Wednesday morning. So it's the day of the week and also the time. For me personally, today's Wednesday, I did not meditate. So it's signaling to me I might need to add another cue, maybe actually setting an alarm. And so the habit for me would be meditating. And then the last step here is reward. So every habit has some kind of reward, whether it's a healthy habit or a habit that you're trying to break, you're getting something out of it. So I'm going to keep going back to the smoker example because I think it's really easy. I used it a lot last session too. But so if you are a smoker, a lot of people will say that the reason they smoke is stress. So they feel stressed and then they smoke. And they have that immediate sense of a little bit of reduced stress. So that's their reward. That's what their brain is telling them that they're getting from the habit. And so this is important to be aware of when you're especially trying to break a habit, to know, what am I getting from this thing? And is there anything else out there that I might be able to do to get a similar reward to make it easier to transition out of this habit if it is a behavior you're trying to change? And this is also important. So not only breaking a habit, but creating a habit. I kind of give you my example of needing to set up the cues in a way that, encourages me to meditate because I'm not in the habit of doing that. The last thing I will say about reward. So it is really important to keep in mind, especially as you go through, especially if you're trying to make some changes here with us throughout the series, is that the healthy habits are likely to be delayed gratification. So you're going to notice it takes longer to feel a full sense of that reward. So exercise is a good example where you exercise one day, you're not going to be shredded. But if you continue the exercise, you're going to continue to see progress longer term. Whereas something like smoking, you might immediately feel better, but it's not good for you long term. So those unhealthy habits are usually the ones that provide quick fixes, but are not good for you long term. And then the healthy habits do take longer and do require patience to see the reward. So keep that in mind if you're getting frustrated with how long it takes to see progress for a healthy habit. So I'm going to just do a couple true falses. It's more fun when you guys are here to engage with us, but I'll give you the answers. So true or false, 95% of our behaviors, emotions, decisions, and actions depend on our subconscious mind. That is true. So again, most of our actions are automatic. We don't have to think about it. It's just part of our day-to-day. True or false, it takes around 66 days on average for a new behavior to become automatic. This is also true. So again, this is an average number. It does depend on how long that thing has been a habit or how hard it is to change that habit. And it depends on how much you can adjust those cues if you need to. Like for me, for the meditation thing, it's taking me much longer, but I think it's because I needed to adjust the cues. True or false, habits are not only our automatic actions or reactions, but they're also our automatic thoughts. This is true. I did say this earlier. True or false, habit change is easy. That one is false with an exclamation point. It is difficult to change habits because they are so automatic and not conscious. And then last one, true or false, it's important for us to be able to identify our own habits. And this would be true. And kind of like I was saying earlier, just to become aware of what is serving you and what is not. And so you can decide what you want to do about it. So today we're going to talk, right now I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do about habits once you've identified. So I want everyone to take a minute. If you need to, you can go ahead and pause this to think about what kind of habits, either one that you want to create, a new habit, or it can be one that you want to break, an old habit that you might feel is no longer serving you or is unhealthy. And while you're thinking, I am going to give you some examples in the next slide if you're like sitting there having a hard time thinking of some habits. But another thing that you could do is if you did do the session before this on types of health, you created some kind of SMART goal. And so if that is a habit, you can also think about that. So for me, when I did my SMART goal, it actually was on meditation. So it happens to work well with this. So here's a list of a bunch of different kinds of healthy habits if you're looking for examples. And here's where I think would be a good time to pause this if you need to figure out those 1 to 2 habits to identify. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about what we're going to do with those habits that you just identified. So if you're not familiar with habit tracking, I'm about to show you a couple things. If my cat gets out of the way so I can pull up the screen. So in the resources online, so again, on lifeafterincarceration.com, under the habits section, you'll see that resource section. And there's only a couple resources for today. So this first one is the habit tracker that you saw on my screen a second ago. And this is what you'll want to pull out right now. So whatever you just identified when I had you pause this, I want you to write in this section. So this is kind of a way that we're going to track progress with those habits that you're either trying to make or break. The other thing that I would say when you're doing this, so I'm going to write mine in here, is to think about being realistic with yourself, and then also think about frequency. So don't just write meditation, because for me, my goal was meditation once a week. So I'm going to put that, oops, not 12, 1 time per week. For you, if it's something like drinking 8 cups of water every day, you would put, 8 cups of water daily. So it will look different. This is part of how this is an individualized plan. So however many times you want to see yourself doing that during the week, it could be journaling twice a week, it could be praying, 5 days a week, that kind of thing. So you're going to put your habits in here. And then what you're going to do is throughout the week, if you see that you're doing these things, you're going to keep track by putting a little check in the box. And this will help just be able to track progress on the habits. And it also helps increase awareness and reminds you that this is something that you're trying to change. The other thing that I think is a good suggestion might be using the habit tracker as a habit that you might need to track. So for some people, they can pick this up really easy. They don't need a reminder. They get really into it. For some people, they forget about using the tracker, and then like 3 days later, you have to think back on like, okay, what did I do Monday? What did I do Tuesday? And it can be hard to think back that way. So if you need to, you can go ahead and make that, using the habit tracker daily, and then checking off, how often you're using that. So again, these are just ways to reinforce the habit and to track the habit that you're trying to make or break. So let me go back to our screen. And so I want you to use the sheet that I just showed you and go ahead and write at least 2 habits that you want to start tracking this week. You can go ahead and pause this if you need time to think of those and write those in there. And then the next thing I want you to think about with this is where you're going to put this. So kind of like I mentioned before, it can be easy to forget to do this if you're not used to doing this. Again, it's a habit to use this daily. So you want to think about putting it somewhere visible. For me, it's right here in my office on this board. For some people, it's on their fridge. For some people, it's in their daily planner that they look at already every day. So think of a place that you already look daily that will be easy for you to get in the habit of using this, of seeing and being reminded of the habits that you want to make or break. And remember, again, just be realistic with yourself. Use those SMART goal components that we talked about last time. So I think here's where I'm going to let Spencer take it away and get into routines. Oh, sorry, one more thing before you go, Spencer. I was going to say that this habit tracker is something that you can add to that strategy section of the individualized plan. So if you see yourself using this, you could add it as a strategy to help you towards your goals. And then it's also something that you want to keep with you, because we might start adding habits as you're going through these series. You might come up with some other things that you want to add to the tracker.
So next, we are going to look at a routine, including how the routine fits into what we just learned about with habits and habit tracking. So a routine is all of the different activities that you do daily, including your habits. As occupational therapists, we work to help people adapt and organize their daily activities into routines that help to promote a healthy lifestyle and help people reach their goals. What's important to remember is that your routine is going to be personalized to you and what will help you be the most successful in achieving your healthy goals. So there is no one size fits all approach when it comes to creating a routine. So for myself, I might find a routine that's very structured and where I'm writing out essentially what is every hour or nearly every hour of my day, because I found that to help me stay as accountable as possible. However, other people may benefit from a less structured routine or may benefit from a routine that does not require such rigid preparation. So with that in mind, one thing that helps you keep and maintain accountability is something called an accountability buddy, which is someone that is generally striving for the same things as you, or just someone who offers support and offers you a chance to check in as far as how your routine is going, how your habits are going, and it offers you that kind of emotional or supportive individual that keeps you accountable outside of just writing down our routine itself. So as mentioned, when it comes to creating a routine, the most important thing to do is finding your structure. And as mentioned, your structure is going to be individualized to you. You will have to maybe even do some trial and error as far as what works best for you to help you achieve those healthy habits and goals. So it's important to recognize that when creating a routine or creating a structure, it can help to give you a sense of control in your day. It can help to improve your focus, organization, and productivity. When you have a routine, it's about more than just your day-to-day responsibilities and your work. Don't forget to also include time for self-care. That is something, especially as you try to implement some of these big changes, whether big habits or big routines, self-care can be brushed under the rug. So that's where maybe a rigid routine may be more beneficial, because you are also considering that self-care time. So in a routine, and when we are looking to create our routine, there's some sort of questions here that you can ask yourself that might offer a starting point. So these questions filter down from what questions all the way to why questions. So you can think of things like, what are your goals? What activities benefit you? And what activities do you enjoy? And of course, a lot of these, especially when looking at activities, can be referenced to some of the habits that we just identified that we either want to include or remove from our routine. So then there's other questions you can ask yourself, like when it comes to creating a routine, such as when will you incorporate new habits? And do you have a morning or nighttime routine, or would you find either of those beneficial? So when it comes to things like selecting activities, of course, that can fit very well into the previously discussed SMART format. If you are looking to create a routine, you may have to ask yourself questions like, okay, I have this activity, but what is the specific activity I'm looking to include? Is this activity achievable? Like, am I not setting myself up to exercise 5 hours every single day? Obviously, that would not be as achievable as exercising for 30 minutes 3 times a day. And then we can also include the R from the SMART goal format, so relevant. Of course, we want our activities or our habits to pertain to some of the goals we have identified. And then when it comes to selecting and creating a routine, kind of touched on, we can also utilize the M of the SMART format, which is measurable. So not only just picking out a specific achievable relevant activity, but also kind of creating a routine to give ourselves a specific time of day. So whether it's 30 minutes, half hour, or also utilizing it for frequency. So how many times in a day. And then when you kind of look more towards the when to incorporate new habits, and also would you prefer a nighttime or a morning routine, that's when we can turn to some of our previous education when it comes to how to create new habits or break new habits. So when you ask yourself the question, when can I incorporate new habits, or would I prefer morning or nighttime routine, we might look at what are some of the cues that we would see throughout the day that could help us establish our new habits. So going back to what may cue you, whether this is an internal cue, such as a feeling that you might experience every day, or an external cue, such as in a specific situation or environment, that might help you to structure and integrate some of your habits into your daily routines. If you are already if it's a new habit that you want to start, that's a specific time, for example, like every Monday at 7 a.m. That might be your external cue of just the time, or if it's an internal cue, and it comes to maybe wanting to establish a sleep routine, and your internal cue could be the feeling of being sleepy or tired. Those are some of just the things that you can look for when it comes to creating our routines. And then also not only incorporating our habits, but also creating other activities that we want to achieve. So I will show you an example of what a routine looks like. And what is important to note that when you are creating these routines and incorporating your habits, one of the most important things to do is, if you already have an organization system, we encourage you to kind of add some of your desired habits or activities within whatever system that you use currently. So you don't necessarily have to go out and make a big change, or you don't necessarily have to rework everything that you do in your daily routine. A lot of this, when it comes to successfully implementing habits and then therefore successful routines, it's important to integrate it into what you do already to then give yourself the best chance of success versus maybe revamping your whole routine. So this kind of shows an example of what a weekly routine might look like. But as noted, a lot of this is, as noted by the black text, a lot of this is the typical weekly routine that someone is already doing from the day to day. And then the lone addition is this meditation one time a week from 7 to about 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So you can see a lot of this is already within the existing structure of a weekly routine, but then now we have the goal of adding this specific habit, which is meditation.
Thank you, Spencer. So then the last thing I'll say, so planning ahead, we're just going to be doing managing conditions next week and next session. But actually the screen that Spencer was just sharing, let me show you actually the resources. At the bottom of the resource page where the habit tracker was, you'll see some examples of routine places that you can schedule your routine. So this one is pretty like structured. It gives you hour by hour. Sorry, it just started sharing. Here's the weekly schedule. Hour by hour, you'll see Monday through Sunday. And then below that is a broader weekly schedule. So again, you can write in what you want to do to certain days. And if there's anything that you do weekly already, you could put it in there. You can write to-do lists, notes, and goals. So these are just two examples of places that you could start to write your routine. You could also just put it in, if you already use a planner, I would suggest putting it with something you already use if it does fit there, because again, it kind of just makes it more likely you're going to see it and work with it if it's connected to something that's already existing, kind of like Spencer was just saying. So next week we'll do managing conditions. And then this is just your final reminder to think about today's session. If there's anything that you learned that you feel like would be a good tip, don't forget to add it to your individualized plan at the bottom, anywhere that you feel like it fits, either in that reminder section, the tip section, or the strategy, or even if you thought of a new goal as we went through this. But yeah, we hope to see you next time for managing conditions. Thanks.